I think when you look at the vote, what immediately stood out to me, it just seemed that a lot of the older senators were voting for the Ukraine aid and a lot of the younger ones were not. So I actually, being the dork that I am, went into an Excel, put in everyone's ages, and it turned out that, yeah, the average age of these Republican senators that voted for the bill was 69. The average age of those voting against was 58.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford, and I'm here with commentary editor Conn Carroll. And Conn, there was a Ukraine vote in the Senate this week. You had some interesting observations about how that broke down.
Yeah, well, I think when you look at the vote, what immediately stood out to me, it just seemed that a lot of the older senators were voting for the Ukraine aid and a lot of the younger ones were not. So I actually, being the dork that I am, went into an Excel, put in everyone's ages, and it turned out that, yeah, the average age of these Republican senators that voted for the bill was 69. The average age of those voting against was 58. That's just, kind of from a bigger spectrum. When you drill down, you can see at the different delegations, it kind of shows too. So in the one hand, you have Mitt Romney, who's in his 70s, voting for it. Senator Lee in his low 50s, voting against it. Kentucky, you have, of course, Mitch McConnell, who's advanced in years, I guess you could say, voted for it, and Senator Paul, who's actually not as young as I thought he was, but still obviously much younger, voted against it. And then when you look at Arkansas, you have a very young, hawkish Tom Cotton. I was surprised he voted no, but he did vote no on it.
Interesting.
But then you had the much older Bozeman voting for it. So both from a macro perspective and drilling on the delegations, you really saw a youth movement away from the Ukraine aid vote.
Now, you also observed that were it not for one, Congressman Matt Gaetz, Ukraine aid might have already passed Congress by now. Why do you say that?
I think we forget that this whole immigration border farce only happened after Gaetz filed for a motion to vacate to get rid of Kevin McCarthy. Gaetz actually said in his statement, one of the reasons he filed the motion to get rid of McCarthy was because he thought McCarthy was supportive of Ukraine aid and that he was trying to stop it. I'm not a big Matt Gaetz fan, but he seems to have been successful. I mean, we sat around and waited for this border security farce to play out, which is never going to happen. And it finally didn't, but that delayed it for 3 months. Now we have the Senate that's finally passed a bill, but the House still, we don't know how the House is going to react to it. So as far as delaying it, he's definitely succeeded in that sense. And if Kevin McCarthy had been around, we could have solved this 3 months ago.
And finally, what do you think is going to happen next with Ukraine aid? Are we going to see a bill make it to President Biden's desk?
I think we will eventually. There's just too much of a bipartisan consensus for it to be done. How that happens, I don't know. I think probably the best path for Mike Johnson, I think, would be to take up the Senate bill, allow the House to amend it. I think you could put a lot of tough votes for Senate Democrats to take on that bill, send it back to the Senate, so you at least could have some good victories. You could put Remain in Mexico in there. There's stuff you could put onto the bill that would allow you to save face that you were doing it. Another way he could do it is just to ignore it and allow for a discharge position. So in this case, you would someone who is in favor of it, you could be a Democrat or Republican. They just need to get signatures from a majority of House members, and then that would force the bill to the floor. So that would be a way for him to just ignore it. He wouldn't have his fingerprints on it in any way, but it would still allow for the bill to pass.
Well, Conn, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
You can get more writing from Conn and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.